Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So the card in this quick take might just be the most exciting spoiler that we have seen in this entire spoiler season so far. And it very well could be in contention to be considered the most powerful Boros commander of all time. Now the Lorehold College has been giving Boros a ton of amazing cards and amazing commanders. Earlier today, we saw Quintorius Field Historian, which is an amazing name, and an amazing elephant commander that loves the graveyard. And I may have spoken too soon when I called it the Lorehold Graveyard Commander in the thumbnail because this commander loves graveyards as well, but we'll get to that here in a second. And on the earliest episode from today, I talked about the Lorehold Elder Dragon, Lorehold. It's an Elder Dragon that can hit hard and let you cast spells off the top of your library for free. Again, just a quick note, with these quick takes, if I make any mistakes, my apologies. It's bound to happen. I'm making these as quickly and as efficiently as I possibly can, and mistakes happen. Sometimes. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So the commander on this quick take is Hofri Ghostforge. Hofri is a 4/5 dwarf cleric that costs 3 red-white. He has spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. And whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. Yeah, that is a powerful effect. Basically, when any of your non-token creatures die, they come back, and they come back more powerful. And of course, there are ways to use and abuse this for an incredible amount of value. And when that spirit dies, you get that creature back in your graveyard. So if you've got ways to get that back, you can do this all over again. With the right build, Hofri can provide you an absurd amount of value, which is unheard of for the majority of Boros commanders. Again, the Lorehold College is providing Boros a lot of really exciting things, and the most exciting might just be Hofri. So now let's talk about some cards that might work really well with Hofri if you want to build a deck around him. The first thing that I thought of when I saw this commander was, wow, that is a fantastic way to abuse some really powerful ETBs. So you're going to want to run creatures like Sun Titan, Goblin Dark Dwellers, and Combustible Gearhulk. Again, you get your ETB when this creature comes in, and then if it dies, you get a spirit token of it, and you're getting that ETB again. Sun Titan has, when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this can essentially reanimate something, and maybe that's something else that has an ETB, so you can keep abusing that. And then Goblin Dark Dwellers has, when it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card will be put in your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So yeah, essentially you're casting a free spell. And then when Combustible Gearhulk comes into play, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If they don't, you mill 3, and then Combustible Gearhulk deals damage to them equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards. So either you're drawing some cards or hitting an opponent for a good amount. Again, Hofri can essentially at the very least double up on the amount of value that you're getting with your ETBs. And there are plenty of other fantastic ETBs in these colors to consider. When Chancellor Forge comes into play, you get a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield for every single creature you control. And then Molten Primordial is essentially a triple threat in effect, giving you one of each of your opponent's creatures temporarily. And then when Crater Hellion comes into play, it deals 4 damage to each other creature, and it's got Echo for 4 red, which usually is a bad thing, but in this deck, it's actually a good thing. Because at the beginning of your next upkeep, if you don't pay that Echo cost, it dies. And again, it dying is not a bad thing for this deck because you get a copy of it. So this is essentially a mini board wipe that you get twice. And again, a lot of the creatures in this deck, including your commander, can survive this. And the ones that can't, well, they die and you get another ETB. Another ETB that I want to bring up is Resolute Archangel. Basically, when it comes into play, your life total becomes 40 if it's less than 40. So yeah, this can make you really hard to kill when you get her ETB multiple times. But of course, we've also got some creatures that can do some powerful things when they leave play as well. So let's start off by talking about the Cavaliers with Cavalier of Dawn and Cavalier of Flame. When Cavalier of Dawn enters the battlefield, destroy up to one target non-land permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. When Cavalier of Dawn dies, return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, our commander can help us double up its ETB and its LTB. We can get rid of some problematic non-land permanents, and we can also get back some things from our graveyard. And then Cavalier of Flame says when it enters the battlefield, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. And when it dies, it's going to deal X damage to each opponent in each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in our graveyard. So this can help us swap out our hand and dish out a ton of damage. And then Hoarding Dragon has when it enters the battlefield, search your library for an artifact card, exile, then shuffle your library. And then when it dies, we get that artifact into our hand. Essentially, with this commander, this is a double tutor effect for 2 artifacts. And then there's Angel of Serenity, which when it comes into play, we can exile up to 3 other target creatures from the battlefield and/or creatures from graveyards. And then when it leaves the battlefield, we return the exiled cards to the owner's hands. This is an incredibly flexible card that can get rid of our opponent's things or even our own. We can use it to abuse some more of our ETBs, or we can just get some things from our graveyard back into our hand that we can recast and then abuse their ETBs again. And speaking of abusing ETBs again, there's Glorious Protector. When it enters the battlefield, we can exile any number of non-angel creatures we control until it leaves the battlefield. And of course, Revelark is another fantastic LTB. When it leaves the battlefield, we return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. Again, there are a lot of fantastic ETBs and LTBs to pick from, depending on what direction that you want to take this deck. Some things that you definitely need in this deck, though, are free sacrifice outlets. Ashnod's Altar can be a bit expensive, but it's definitely one of the most powerful ones out there. It has sacrifice a creature, add colors to your mana pool. Being able to sacrifice a creature at any point that we want is huge for a deck like this. Again, that essentially just ensures that we're going to get that token and that ETB or LTB whenever we want. And getting some free mana on top of that is huge. Thermopod is a much more budget-friendly version, and it has sacrifice a creature, add red to your mana pool. So it doesn't give us as much mana, but it does give us one of our colors. And then Goblin Bombardment helps us out in a different way. It says sacrifice a creature, it deals 1 damage to our creature or player. So this can help us ping down pesky creatures or ping down our opponents. Now you might not know this, but there are actually some old white enchantments that actually are free sacrifice outlets. Fanatical Devotion has sacrifice a creature, regenerate target creature. So this can help us protect one of our key pieces, especially our commander. And then Martyr's Cause has sacrifice a creature, prevent all damage to a creature or player from one source. So this can protect some of our creatures from a damage-based board wipe or protect ourselves. It's a flexible card that can help us out in a lot of scenarios. But again, the important part is that sacrificing a creature is free. And of course, Altar of Dementia and other sacrifice outlets can be considered for this deck as well. And if we've got a good amount of graveyard recursion, milling ourselves is not a bad thing at all. And then some other types of cards that we want to consider are ones that benefit us whenever creatures come into play, like Impact Tremors, Warstorm Surge, and Cathar's Crusade. Impact Tremors has whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, deals 1 damage to each opponent. This can add up a lot throughout the game, especially with a deck like this. And then Warstorm Surge can be even bigger. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Again, we've got some heavy hitters in this deck, and when they come in, they're going to ping opponents for a lot, and when they come in as a spirit, they'll ping them for even more. And of course, with all those creatures coming in, Cathar's Crusade can make our entire army even bigger. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a ++1 counter on each creature you control. So yeah, in a deck like this can get out of hand really quickly. We've also got some cards that can benefit us in a different way though with Desecrated Tomb and Quintorius. Desecrated Tomb says whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So on top of getting a token copy of one of our creatures when they die, we're also getting a bat. And then Quintorius is somewhat similar. It says spirits you control get +1/+0, and whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So it's going to be giving us even more value and even bigger tokens. And of course, some mass reanimation effects can be incredibly effective in a deck like this, like Rally the Ancestors, Second Sunrise, and Face Reward. Rally the Ancestors says return each creature card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile those creatures at the beginning of your next upkeep, exile Rally the Ancestors. So this basically gets us all of our ETBs from all of our creatures in our graveyard again. And again, with a free sacrifice outlet in play, we get them a second time. The creatures come in, we sacrifice them, they all go away, we get some more tokens, and yeah, that's a ton of value. And then Second Sunrise says each player returns to play all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards that were put into their graveyard from play this turn. And then Fate's Reward is somewhat similar, but just for us. Regardless, both of these can provide us an absurd amount of value with our commander and with a sacrifice outlet. Again, we sacrifice all of our non-token creatures and get a ton of token copies of them. We get their ETBs and then we cast this, and then we get all those creatures back. We can sacrifice them again if we want, and you see where this is going. This commander can provide you an absurd amount of value, and there are a lot of powerful things that you can do with it. And speaking of commanders, let's talk about some other ones that might want this one in the 99. And the first one I'm going to mention, I already mentioned earlier, actually 2 times now at this point, and that's Quintorius. And if you haven't seen the episode on this one yet, make sure you go check that out. And another commander that might want this might be a Spirit Tribal commander like Okagachi. Like me, you might forget about that Anthem effect, the +1/+1 haste and trample, but yeah, that can be very impactful in a deck like this. Now when it comes to pricey cards to consider, there are quite a few, and let's start off with Panharmonicon. Panharmonicon says if an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Basically, it doubles up all of your ETBs, so yeah, in this kind of a deck, this can be absurd. And speaking of absurd, there's Anointed Procession. It says if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. You know what's better than your creature dying and you getting a token copy of it? You getting 2 token copies of it. That's double the ETBs, double the power, double everything, it's just absurd. And yeah, with many of the commanders that have been spoiled so far, they could really use this card, so the price of this card is going to skyrocket. Another pricey card to consider though is Purphoros, God of the Forge. It's essentially a harder to deal with impact tremors that deals 2 damage instead of 1. And if you've got the money for it, Phyrexian Altar is definitely a fantastic sacrifice outlet for this deck. It says sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color. And speaking of mana generation, there's Dockside Extortionist. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to get X treasure tokens where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. So yeah, this can give you an incredible amount of mana on its own, but if you can abuse its ETB trigger, you're going to get even more. But now it's time for me to wrap things up and give you my final thoughts on Hofri Ghostforge. This commander is absurdly powerful. With the right build, you can have incredibly explosive turns and really take over a game. I definitely think it's in the conversation for the most powerful Boros commander of all time. Now, I'm not saying that it is, but I'm saying it's definitely in the conversation. But truly only time will tell with this, and who knows, maybe a Lorehold commander is still yet to be spoiled and it's even more powerful than this. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.